he got to tell you a little bit about me. So let me tell you a little bit about him. So he was truly a great basketball player back in his day. I mean, what I remember back about that team is this guy could really shoot it. Now, he couldn't make it, but he could really shoot it. And we used to affectionately call him the Will Rogers of high school basketball. He never met a shot he didn't like. And you know, I actually on that team, it was a really good team. I actually led the team in rebounding, which wasn't that hard to do because Donnie did a lot of missing. So we had a lot of rebounds. And before either one of us take any credit for that team, I can do this all day. I hope y'all didn't make plans. But that team in 1972, before either one of us take a lot of credit for that team, was undefeated state champions. We had a guy by the name of Alvin Adams, who ended up being the NBA Rookie of the Year a few years later after playing at OU. Any team with Alvin on it was going to be pretty good, wouldn't you agree with that? And so, but I sent him an article not long ago. There's a national publication called Max Preps that talks about the best team in each state's history. And I'm talking since inception, in the whole years and decades of a state. And in Oklahoma, the best team in the state of Oklahoma in our history of statehood was the 1972 Putnam City Pirates. And that is something to be proud of. And Alvin, actually our team was inducted in the Putnam City Hall of Fame not long ago, and Alvin came back for it. And he asked me, he said, what do you think our average point spread, winning point spread was during that year? And I said, Alvin, I don't know. We didn't have a three-point shot, so it was 10, 12. He says, no, it was 27. We won by 27 points per game without the three-point play, without the three-point shot. So it was something to be proud of. We had good players, but we had great athletes in the school at the same time. I mean, Alvin, obviously, still is the second leading scorer in Phoenix Suns history. He's the leading rebounder in Phoenix Suns history still today. But we also had a guy by the name of Steve Largent, who's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We had Bob Shirley, that pitched for the Yankees for 12 years. We had Tony Brantley, who was Joe Montana's backup at Notre Dame at quarterback. We had Pat Ryan, who quarterbacked the New York Jets for a dozen years, all at the same school at the same time. We had no idea how good we were. We were just a bunch of dumb high school kids. And we really didn't have any idea. And we thought winning was easy. Making the team was hard because we had such good players. But looking back on it now, I found out, especially in a coaching career, I think your pastor will agree with me, I'm a much better coach when I have good players. And so we really had good players back then. So it's an honor to be with you today, it really is. And I love your pastor. He's such a man of God, and I truly respect him as a pastor, as a person, and as a personal, lifelong friend. But I ask, why me? Why am I here today? Because I do have a story. All of you have a story too. All of you could be up here, and I'd love to hear your story. But what sets mine apart a little bit is that it's unique and it's unprecedented. For example, I'm quite sure I'm the only guy in this room that's been fired by Michael Jordan. I'm pretty sure about that. I'm the only guy in this room that was in an opposing NBA front office that traded the rights of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to the Oklahoma City Thunder. and you're welcome. And that story was a phenomenal story because we had a chance to get, the guy we wanted was Kawhi Leonard, who was at that time the NBA, the MVP of the NBA, the best player. But Kawhi didn't want to come by himself. He wanted to pick who he could come with. And the guy that he wanted to play with was Paul George in Oklahoma City. So these guys wanted to play together. So we talked to the Thunder. We got on the phone with them. So what do you want? We want your draft picks for the next 10 years, and we want SGA. And we're getting 2 of the top 5 players in the NBA. So we did the deal. And it looked like, wow, what a fantastic deal we made. Doesn't look so great today. And there's a lot of guys I see talking about, oh, I never signed off on that. Doc Rivers was our coach and former general manager, and he'd talk about, I never wanted to trade SGA. He had just come off his rookie year, averaged 9 points a game. Nobody knew how good he was going to be. But nobody wants to take the blame for that now. But I'll do it. I'm the guy. Traded SGA. So my story is a little bit different in those respects. And after Putnam City, I went on and played, I think Donnie mentioned it, University of Tulsa, which I had a very unremarkable college career. And I can remember we're playing Oral Roberts, which is a big game in Tulsa. It's a rivalry game. ORU in Tulsa. Mabee Center had just opened. There's 11,000 people there, and they're screaming and hollering. 11,000 ORU fans, and it comes down to the last shot. I'm in the game, and we call a play, and I get the last shot. 1 second left. We're down 1 point with 10 seconds left. The clock's winding down. I get fouled. 1 second on the clock. We're down by 1 point, and I'm shooting 2 free throws. What every athlete dreams of is an opportunity to win the big game. So I go to the free throw line. These people are screaming at me. It's a Christian school, and they're yelling awful things at me now. They don't like me very much at all. And so I go up and I take the first free throw. Hits the back of the iron, bounces up, comes down, rolls around a couple of times, falls out. I thought, oh my God, I'm an 85% free throw shooter. This should be easy. And so then ORU calls timeout to ice the free throw shooter. And these people are screaming, and it's a packed standing room only, and they're screaming and hollering. And I look a little bit daunted and intimidated, and I look over my left shoulder, and there I see the man himself, Dr. Oral Roberts, in the stands, in the VIP section. And he's standing up, and he's praying. And I thought, he's praying for me to miss this free throw. And then I look over my right shoulder, and I see these words that are painted on the arena floor, and it says, expect a miracle. And I'm thinking, expect a miracle for who? It's for me. I need a miracle to make this free throw. So I go up and take the second free throw, barely draw iron, miss, we lose the game. And when you're 19 years old, you think you've let your team down, you've let your school down, you've let your city down, you've let your teammates down, your best friends, and you think, this is going to be the worst day of my life. And through 19 years, it was the worst day of my life. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some other bad days and some other good days too. So I'll fast forward to a coaching career. I went to England, as your pastor said, and played professionally a couple of years, and then came back and started coaching. I coached at Ada High School. Won a state championship at Ada, first one in 20 years. Back on winning track. We're winning again. Then I go to Oklahoma State as an assistant coach for Paul Hansen. First year, we win the Big 8 championship and go to the NCAA tournament. Winning again. I go to OBU. I'm thinking, man, I got this swagger going about me. I'm really good at this. We'll just win everything. High school, college, high school, whatever. We just win. And then I go to OBU. And my first year as head coach at OBU, we go 10-22. 10 wins, 22 losses. But, that's a fluke. It'll be better next year. Got everybody back. Next year we go 5-27. Thought, whoa, I'm not quite as good at this as I thought. And so they're about ready to fire me now at OBU. I'm 15-49 in 2 years. And so we turn it around. We get better players, and I become a better coach. And the next couple of years, we go above 500, and then my third year after that, we end up being number one in the nation and turned it around pretty good and got very, very fortunate. And then I went to Oklahoma City University. And when I went to OCU, I had a president that was real clear about what he wanted. He said, we have a stellar reputation in college basketball. We want to win. He said, your graduation rates won't get you fired here, but if you lose, that will. So we went out and we started winning. And I got a player that, by the name of Eric Manuel, who was one of the top 5 players in the country, coming to OCU, who had a long Division I history. And so we go at OCU and we start winning. The first year we win a national championship, first one in history at OCU. We win a national championship. The next year, same team back, we go undefeated, win another national championship. We win 56 games in a row, which has not been duplicated since 1992. Because, again, we had good players. And so I can remember after that, that's when the big boys start calling. And I'm thinking, I've got a chance to maybe do something in this career at a higher level. I get a call from Baylor University with a rich tradition, and they've had 4 straight losing seasons. They're not very good. Nobody's going to games. Nobody's buying tickets. They're not very good. It's a great time for a coach to go in there and try to turn things around. And I remember being a Baptist. I had made a profession of faith, Nichols Hills Baptist Church, when I was 15 years of age, and then followed in baptism a couple of years later, same church. And I remember going to my old pastor and asking him, I said, preacher, we've won 56 games in a row, and I got a chance to go to Baylor. I said, I don't know what to do. Should I stay here and keep this record going or keep the streak going, or should I take the Baylor job? And I said, I just want to go where God is. And he looks at me and he said, son, go where the money is, because God's everywhere. I thought, wow, that's pretty good advice. So I go to Baylor. And we got it going at Baylor. They've had 4 straight losing seasons. We turn it around. We have 2 straight winning seasons. We lead the nation in increased attendance. People are excited. They call us the Running Bears. I'd followed Gene Iba, who was kind of a slow-down coach, and now all of a sudden we're running, we're scoring points, we're filling the arena. We've got a ranked recruiting class on the way. Everything is hunky-dory, man. I'm making money. I got my own TV show. I got my own radio show. We've just built this big mansion on a cul-de-sac out in the country. My camps are overflowing. I'm making more money than I know what to do with, and I am the toast of the town. ESPN calls me, look at him. This is one of the rising stars in our country in college basketball. Darrell Johnson, Baylor University. I had the world by the tail. Everything was great. Everything was going great until 1994, and then it wasn't. Because in light of all of that, in 1994, for the first time in NCAA history, a major college basketball coach was indicted by a federal grand jury over recruitment and eligibility of players. That head coach was me. I was indicted. The next day I was fired at Baylor University over these players and their eligibility. This had never happened before. Going to the United States Marshal's office and being fingerprinted. Seeing your name so publicly humiliated. It went national. It was the biggest sports story of the year. I can remember sitting in my living room watching TV, nightly news, NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw, and boom, there's my picture. First story, lead story. Coach in Waco, Texas, prison bound. So I hired a team of attorneys. All the money I had made, all the fame I had got, all the championships, they didn't mean much now. I hired a team of attorneys to defend me in a court of law. We spent a year. The next year, I'm unemployed. We're in depositions. We're in interrogatories. We're doing witness statements. We've got investigations going on. We spent a year going through all that until the trial. And we're in federal court. Now I'm charged with 7 felony counts. And a person at that time that's charged in a multi-count federal indictment, there is a 90% conviction rate, which means the mandatory minimums at that time per count, per guilty count and verdict is a minimum of 5 years in the penitentiary. I'm looking at a potential of 35 years in a federal penitentiary over this game that I loved more than life itself. Everything else had become incidental in my life, including family, including my faith, friends, children, players. Everything else had just become nothing compared to this game of basketball, which I say many times has become my mistress. I love this more than anything. And it loves me back. And this is what I want. And this is what I lost. So I spent the next year going through all the depositions and everything. We go to trial. My assistants are tried also. And the 4 of us are in federal court for 2 weeks with accounts, witness statements, witnesses, jury box loaded with 12 jurors. They're going to decide my future. They're going to decide whether I'm innocent or guilty. They're also going to decide whether I'm a free man or not. So I can remember coming out on verdict day. And my lead attorney, Jim Darnell, who we went to high school with, was a football player, was Ivy League educated, law school, and he said, you'll be able to tell when that jury walks out. If they make eye contact, that's a good sign. If they don't, it's not. They walk out and there's no eye contact. It does not look good. So the verdict, the judge says, have you reached a verdict? The foreman stands up and says, we have, Your Honor. What say you? In the matter of the United States of America versus Darrell Johnson, count 1, we find the defendant not guilty. In count 2, we find the defendant not guilty. In count 3, we find the defendant not guilty. In count 4, we find the defendant not guilty. In count 5, we find the defendant not guilty. In count 6, we find the defendant not guilty. And in count 7, we find the defendant not guilty. We've defied the odds. It's all innocent. We're hugging. Jim Darnell, my attorney, turns to me, and the first thing out of his mouth, he says, there is a God. Because you know how fervent and passionate and intensely we pray when we're in crisis. Man, I was in crisis. And I made all kinds of promises and deals with God through this that I was passionate and fervent and intensely involved now in my faith when it became life and death, when it became about my freedom. So what now? I'm not guilty. I still love this game more than anything. So I start thinking, I'm going to go coach again. I'm going to coach again. Couldn't get a sniff. I mean, this had gone national. The publicity, I had lost my reputation. I had lost all my money. All the money I made was gone, spent on lawyers. Now, my family had left me. My wife had filed for divorce. They were gone. I was unemployed. I had no visible means of support. I had pretty much lost everything. And so now I go and fight with the NCAA. I think, well, okay, if I'm going to coach again, I've got to go try to get this NCAA to give me a green light to coach. They had given me a 5-year, what's called a show cause requirement, which means nobody can hire you for 5 years because of your transgressions. So I fight with the NCAA. That takes another year and a whole lot of money that I didn't have. And after a year, we come through it. We get mostly a not guilty. Then we have to file an appeal because there's one thing that still stands, and that's that show cause. Because they say, you lost institutional control. That was their catchphrase. You lost institutional control. So we appeal that. That goes another year, and we win the appeal. And back in those days, you don't beat the NCAA, but we did. We did. So I'm thinking, well, I'm gonna go coach again. I had moved back to Oklahoma City and had gone to real estate school, had kind of started dabbling in that just to keep the lights on. I'd used all my savings and all my resources, and through a divorce and through trying to defend myself first in court and then with the NCAA. So everything was gone, but I still love this game. But I think more than anything is now my faith was back. Because I had been through so much. I had so much loss. I had lost my family, my friends. Friends didn't want to hang out with you. There's guilt by association somehow. So you lose your friends, you lose your reputation and everything that you've stood for and tried to build throughout your whole life. And so I had to get right with God during this time, and I did. I got back involved in church in Oklahoma City. I started going to men's groups. I was in Sunday school. I prayed every day. I was in His Word. I'm thinking, I am back where I need to be with my Lord and Savior. And so when the appeal came back and we won, I started feeling the nudge to coach again, but I couldn't get anybody interested. And so my closeness to God had resulted in conversations with God. And I don't know how God talks to you. I think He talks to all of us a little differently. I think some can hear audibly. I think some hear His voice, some get a nudge, some get a feeling, some have a dream, some just see it in His Word. But I'm having conversations with God. And God's telling me, of all things, you need to go to Houston and be with your son. My son and his mom had moved to Houston. She had taken a job there. And so I'm doing the every other weekend thing, driving to Houston every other weekend to see my little boy, who is the most important thing in my life now. And so God is saying, move to Houston. And I said, no. I don't know anybody in Houston. I don't have any money to go to Houston. And so I thought, I'm just saying no, and I'm just going to dismiss that. I'm not sure that's the Holy Spirit here, but it wouldn't go away. And I'm getting this nudge every day. Go to Houston, go to Houston. And I think maybe for the first time in my life, I acted in faith. And I said, okay. And the only asset I had now was I had some retirement built up. I cashed in my retirement to get a Ryder truck to fill my furnishings and my belongings, and I headed south to Houston, where I didn't know anybody except my son and my ex-wife. But God kept saying, go. I'll bless you there. Surrender. Make yourself obedient. And I think for the first time in my life, I was obedient. And I went. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have an agenda. I didn't have any idea what this was going to be like. But I bought a house with my retirement income and utilized all of it. And I bought this house without a plan, but I was with my son. And I thought, it's not going to be any different. I'm still going to see him every other weekend, but you're there. And God told me to go there. I thought, what am I going to do for money? I got to keep the lights on. How am I going to keep the lights on? How am I going to pay bills? I thought, well, I still love this game so much. Maybe I can go coach high school. So I started applying at high schools. I thought, I'm so overqualified for high school. I'll get this little country high school job, and it's going to be great. And they bite, and they interview me. And I nailed the interview. I know how to do this now. In my mind, I'm so overqualified for this job. It's a little tiny school, North Houston. And they said, okay, we'll call you. Great. I'm already making plans. I know. I've got this job. I nailed that interview. And they call me back for a second interview with the superintendent. I go meet with that superintendent and the committee. It's going great. We've got a rapport going on here, man. I'm already making plans. And this time, I'm close to God. This time, I'm going to do it right. This is why God brought me to Houston. I'm close to my son. I'm back in the game. I'm going to do it right. We're going to concentrate on building men. We're going to concentrate on the intangibles of teamwork and self-sacrifice and work ethic and all of the things that we don't learn in the classroom. And so I'm going to do this right, and I'm making plans, and who am I going to hire as an assistant, and putting a schedule together, and I get the call on a Friday after the second interview. And I get the proverbial, we've decided to go in a different direction. And that was it for me. It was over. It was the last straw. And I was so distraught that I remember walking out of my house in the middle of the afternoon in Conroe, Texas, falling to my knees and sobbing because I had lost everything. I had no backup. I had no parachute. I had no agenda. And I'm shaking my fist at God. God, you lied to me. You brought me here. I surrendered to you. I submitted to you. First time in my life, I gave it all to you. Why am I here? I blame you, God. As I'm crying and I'm screaming at the heavens and I'm shaking my fist, thinking, what was this about? I'd lost everything. I dropped everything. I came on faith. My faith brought me here. And then I go back in the house and I collect my wits a little bit, and I remember going to bed that night thinking, I haven't lost everything. And I asked God for forgiveness. And I said, I don't have nothing. I have my Lord and my Savior. And I have a little boy that just needs his dad. So I go to bed that night. Sorry, this is raw, man, when I get into this. And so I go to bed that night and thinking, I'm at peace. Because I don't have any more agendas. I don't have any more plans. I don't have a way to do this. I'll start washing windows the next day or whatever I got to do to pay the bills. But God, I'm sorry. I do. I have you. I have that little boy. And so I woke up the next morning, had my coffee, and I'm kind of at peace and don't know where I'm going. Don't have a plan. And the phone rings. And I hear a voice on the other end that I don't recognize. I said, Darrell, this is Kenny Williamson with the New York Knicks. And he said, I just got the job with the expansion team, the Charlotte Bobcats, and we'd like to hire you as an NBA scout. I thought, are you kidding me? This is the highest level of basketball in the world, the NBA, that's calling me. I was wanting this little Class B job at this little country school yesterday and was shaking my fist at God because I didn't get it. And now all of a sudden, I get the NBA calling me. And I said, fantastic. And he goes, well, now wait a minute. There's two contingencies. One is you got to understand that we are going to work your tail off. I got no problem with that. I love this. This is what I do. This is who I am. This is what I want to do. And then the second thing that's non-negotiable is you're going to have to move to Houston. He didn't know where I was. You think maybe God's at work there? And so here I was with my own plan. Even though it was God honoring, it was still my plan. It wasn't his. And so I spent the next year of life as an NBA scout. After going through that night of not having a plan, I remember learning in school about Abe Lincoln, talking about how during times of crisis he would go to his knees only because he had nowhere else to go. I had nowhere else to go except to my Lord and my Savior. This was his plan. So for the next year, I'm an NBA scout for the Charlotte Bobcats, and they work my tail off. But I'm seeing my son every weekend. He's a basketball player. He's in 9th grade now. I'm following him. I'm a part of his life. I go to PTA. I go to sporting events. I go to school plays. I get to be with my son. It's the best ever. It would be a great place to end the story. But it doesn't end there. Because after a year, his school calls me and said, hey, we'd like for you to become our athletic director at your son's school. I thought, well, I can't do that. I've got my dream job over here with the NBA. They said, we know that. We think you can do both. So we'll let you travel and do whatever you need with your NBA job, but just when you're here, come be our athletic director. I said, okay. I took the job. So now, I'm seeing my son every single day at school when I'm home. And I'm on the road, and I'm landing at the airport, and I'm running back to school and back to the airport, and it's crazy, and I love it. And so that goes on for another year. Great place to end the story, but it doesn't end there either. Next year, the headmaster of the school calls me in and says, we'd also like for you to be our basketball coach. Now, at this time, my son's 6'5" in the 9th grade. I said, I can't do that. I've got 2 jobs, full-time jobs. We think you can. We'll hire you a staff, and you just coach the team when you can. So I take that job too. Now I got 3 full-time jobs. And I'm making money again. I can turn the lights on. And so I'm coaching my son, who's a good player. He's going to be a really good player. So now I'm seeing him every day. I'm coaching my son. I'm an NBA scout. Should we end the story there? No. Because for the next 2 years, For the first time in the history of this school in the Woodlands, Texas, our basketball team wins 2 state championships. The crowning achievement of my career. Coaching my son to 2 state championships. And so he graduates, goes on to play college basketball, 4 years of college basketball. I moved back to Oklahoma City and continue to scout for Charlotte, and then a guy by the name of Michael Jordan buys the team, fires 40 employees, brings in his own guys. I quickly catch on in New Orleans with the New Orleans Pelicans. I'm there 5 years. And then I go to the Los Angeles Clippers, and I'm there a bunch of years, and then I finish with the Phoenix Suns. 21 years in the NBA. 21 years in the highest level of this game that I love so very much. And in 2024, I retired from basketball. And so when I think back, and when I look back and I think about what's the best season of life, I turned 71 years of age yesterday. Thank you. And when I look back on my life and the championships and the good and the bad and everything, the best time of my life is this season. Because in the last 3 years, I've been closer to God than ever before. My wife Beth and I, we lead a small group for married couples that have blended families. I'm involved in men's group. I coach other life group leaders at Life Church at various campuses. And I'm close to God. And so, in this past year, I've also launched a book. It's only a game. Available at Amazon. I'm not here to sell books. It's got all these stories and more. But I also, in addition to what Beth and I are doing, October, we welcomed our first baby granddaughter. Talk about changing your life, man. I used to make fun of everybody talking about their grandkids until it was me. It's pretty special. And so, what lessons can I give to you in Arapahoe that I've learned? Well, here's what I've learned. First of all, is that one single act of obedience can change the entire trajectory of your life. God said, go to Houston. I fought it, but I went. My life changed. Think what I would have missed. NBA scout for 21 years, coaching my son's high school team to 2 championships. Think of that. One single act, one single decision for obedience. And then the second lesson I would say is that God's plans are always better than ours. I would have been happy at this little 1A Class B school. God had other plans. I got mad at him. I shook my fist at him. And he said, just wait. I got something way better for you. Way better for you. God's plans are always better than ours. And I think thirdly is that God has a way of turning pain into purpose. That was the hardest thing in my life that I ever had to go through. And what came out of that is a purpose which is real simple: to love God and to love others. You all have a story too. Go tell it. Tell your story too. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be difficulties. And I hope that at the end of the day, my life is not defined by my failures, because I had plenty. Been fired, been indicted, lost games, had failed relationships. I hope my life is not going to be defined by that. But I also hope that my legacy is not the successes I've had, championships, winning games, 21 years in the NBA, it's all part of the journey. Because Scripture tells us in James chapter 1, blessed are those that persevere through trials, for they shall receive the crown of life given by God to those that love Him. And that right there is our championship. God bless you. Thank you so much. Love you.